Howdy y'all. This is my first what and not who theory. In case you were too dense to figure it out from the title, I have the Killhouse on my mind. In Entry Point, the Killhouse is a rather mysterious and complicated mission. Some people don't even consider it canon, which is stupid. It may be a mission definitely separate from the others, but nothing ever said it was uncanon. At this point I feel like I know how Sis rolls. She wouldn't just throw this in and say haha, random uncanon mission. It has to have some purpose. The Killhouse isn't talked about nearly as much as it should be. Everyone I've brought this up to feel awkward discussing it and say they'd rather not. The main storyline is complete, and this mission is still a complete mystery, and that should make it attractive. Well, at least as a theorist, that makes it attractive. I wanted to wait to do this theory until I got around to theorizing about every other Entry Point character. But Prelude is now out, and still nobody is talking about this mission. I gotta give this poor thing the attention it deserves. Now, theory time. Let's kick it off with what the Killhouse is like. The Killhouse isn't even a mission, really. It's a training simulation set up by Halcyon so their operatives can run some practice. It's simple enough. Just try to bypass the guards and crack the vault. If you go loud, you can use a big 2-minute drill to get into the vault. A nice little cakewalk. At least that's what it's supposed to be. But if you do certain tasks and get the settings right, something very intriguing happens. If you set the difficulty to Elite or Legend and trigger loud, you now have engaged the first few steps into activating a secret difficulty. There are 3 wire boxes, red, blue, and green. If you did everything I listed so far, one of those wires will be a darker color than they normally are. Rewire that box. Then another wire from a different box will also become darker. Rewire that one too. Then rewire the remaining box, which should have also turned dark as well. If you did it right, the wires will now be glowing white. If nothing happens, you mess something up and have to restart the mission to try again. The moment you set up the drill to open the vault, everything turns dark. The drill will take 15 minutes instead of 2. Aegis becomes more fierce, and Rose will say, quote, "This isn't right. This isn't what was supposed to happen," end quote, which tells you this was not part of the simulation. If you chose to do Elite, it switches to Legends. Congratulations, you just activated Nightmare Mode. This Nightmare Mode was surprising to take in at first. This mode isn't realistic, unlike the rest of Entry Point, which tries to be grounded to reality. If you survive those very, very long 15 minutes, then I still haven't been able to manage, someday Skylar, get Chaotic Leopard to carry you again. Thanks to them, by the way, they're the best. They got me the Legend SCRS and the Black Dusk badges. Anyways, survive Nightmare Mode, and you get incredibly interesting dialogue from Rose. Quote, "It's done. It's over. Had to have your revenge, didn't you? Couldn't just walk away. I wish it hadn't ended like this. You had to know this is where it would take you. Au revoir." End quote. If you watched my Rose theory, I actually explained what I think those words meant and who they were for, so go watch that after this if you haven't already, please. But why would Rose say this in front of the Freelancer, or Finch as I like to call them? If you saw that other theory, assuming it's correct, you know she wouldn't dare admit her problems to Finch. Her main goal was to keep them away from her problems, which unfortunately backfired horribly. It only dragged them in deeper than she could ever imagine. Just to put the icing on the cake, when you return to spawn, there are weird red words everywhere. Providence. That word now makes my head turn to whatever the source was because it makes me instinctively want to cry. Why did all these unnatural things happen in a realistic game? I use the word realistic loosely. I'm not making fun of the game, far from it. It's just that video games will never be able to 100% copy reality. This actually didn't take that long for me to figure out. Now, I am very certain I know exactly what the Killhouse is. The clue is in the name. Nightmare Mode. What I'm trying to say is, the Killhouse on any other difficulty is canon. The training simulation happened. Rose has been through it before, but Nightmare Mode isn't 100% real. I'm confident that the Killhouse on Nightmare Mode is just Rose having a nightmare. What's my first piece of evidence supporting this theory? Well, the name helps. It's literally called Nightmare Mode. But Skigs, you may cry. It might just be called that because it is a nightmare to deal with. 15 continuous minutes of being locked in a room and fighting for your life would be considered nightmarish. Okay, I'll give you that, but there's more. Finch isn't acting like themselves in Nightmare Mode. Imagine, someone is running you through a normal training simulation at wherever you work. Then all of a sudden, after doing some odd steps, you're caged into a room to defend yourself. Realistically, you'd be very confused and ask your instructor what's going on, but Finch just sorta goes along with it. Like, this is normal. They don't even say anything. Rose is the only one that points out that this is very wrong from the start, but then even she carries on like nothing is wrong. This is often behavior of people in dreams. If the world just got snapped in half like a jawbreaker, your family's most likely sitting on the couch watching the news like it's an average Tuesday. Lucky you, in my dreams my family always tries to kill me in the end, and they usually succeed. To cite a dream my sister had, some random stranger invited her to swim in a lake. Now we're in Florida. In Florida, lakes are danger zones. They absolutely must not be touched because they're infested with alligators looking for some Skate-Mo nuggets for lunch. And if a stranger invited you anywhere suspicious, you're hopefully smart enough to call the cops instead. But she still accepted the offer even though that's not what she would have done in real life. She then immediately got swallowed by a whirlpool. Anyways, my point is, you, other people, and reality are quite high in dreams. It would explain all the weird stuff in the Killhouse, and it would also explain why Rose and Finch weren't acting like themselves. Plus, why would Finch even do all those odd steps in the first place? If they tried that in the waking world, Rose would definitely ask, "What's up? What you messing with?" I hear another objection. Skigs, that's just game logic. Surely the steps to activating this mode would be discarded by other characters. I think you forgot what kind of game we're covering. That is not the case in Entry Point. Shishido is 2 steps ahead of everyone. That weird behavior is not something that would be passable in this game. There's even dialogue prepared for when you do something weird. When you throw Ryan Ross off the roof, Rose is in utter shock. Quote, "Was that... Did you just... Are you serious?" End quote. Rose may be one to goof off in missions, but not even she would do something as completely bizarre as ruining her mission's objective intentionally. That's not all. In the SCRS, when you try to disable the metal detectors when they're already off, Jackdaw is greatly confused. Quote, "Jackdaw, kid, did you just... shut the metal detectors down?" Finch, "Yeah, why?" Jackdaw, "They were already... Never mind, forget it." End quote. He probably reevaluated the intelligence of the Freelancer that night. The second half of Entry Point is just revenge and Jackdaw being done of everybody else. With those examples in mind, if everything was how it normally was, Rose would have called out their unusual behavior. But this isn't normal because it's a dream. After Nightmare Mode really starts, Finch is just there. They just go with the flow, even though the flow is the equivalent of my brother's spine. Spoiler alert, my brother has scoliosis. They don't respond to anything speaking-wise after the difficulty is properly triggered. Rose doesn't act like herself either. As I already pointed out before, she failed to call out how truly uncertain this situation was. She just says, "Huh, would you look at that," and continues. And of course, with Rose not being herself in the nightmare either, she'd be comfortable spilling all her problems, as if Finch was a therapist. Why would Rose have a nightmare? Once again, watch my Rose theory, and it becomes obvious. Even if that theory wasn't true, Rose still has to be in some kind of pain. If not, then what was the purpose of the mysterious dialogue at the end of Nightmare Mode? Like I said before, Sish wouldn't throw that in if it had no purpose. She's smarter than that. But I can already hear even more objections. So Nightmare Mode could have all been a dream, but what if Finch had this dream instead? According to both my Rose and Freelancer theory, those last words could have applied to the Freelancer. Notice how they both say it's finally done. It's all finally finished. Rose knows it's finished when she says those words in the Killhouse. Finch knows it's finished when they say their final words to Jackdaw. They both kept pushing and pushing until they literally died because of it. Rose kept pushing because she cared for Jackdaw and would always follow him. And her death resulted in Finch walking down the same road she did, never stopping until they finally got their revenge for Rose. So in a way, that dialogue could have also been meant for the Freelancer. Rose would never have wanted this for Finch. She wouldn't have wanted Finch to chase revenge in a needless war just to lead to their death. That's exactly what Rose did too. I already explained in my other 2 theories how Rose and Finch meant the world to each other. Imagine if this dream was instead a hallucination, the last thing Finch really saw before they died. Those words could have been for them instead, right? Rose reaching out to them before their death. Those words were aimed at them. It all makes sense, right? Wrong. Dreams are very mysterious, and it's heartbreaking to imagine that this was a dream or a hallucination and Rose was trying to talk to him from death, saying, "Don't go down the same path I did," or "This was the exact same road I took, you made a mistake following it." But this isn't the case. Why? Because of those 2 last words. Au revoir. It was confirmed in Rose's log file that she was French. Au revoir is French for "until we meet again." If this was some sort of hallucination Finch experienced the moment they died, it wouldn't make sense for Rose to say, "until we meet again," because their death is when they meet again, so it can't be a hallucination. But what if it was still a dream Finch had? Again, not possible. Rose's words make it sound like Finch had already reached the end, but their quest for vengeance isn't fulfilled until they die in black dusk. If Rose's words in the nightmare were really meant for them, then it would have been a different message. It'd be more of, "No! Turn back! Please don't waste your life on this path like I did!" They also couldn't have had this dream in Halcyon, because their mental health was better then, and they weren't even focusing on vengeance during that time. They had no reason to. Rose was still alive in Halcyon. That means Finch couldn't have had this dream. The dreamer of this nightmare was Rose, and those chilling words were for Jackdaw. How? For the last time, just go watch those other theories already. They'll explain why this is happening. We're not done yet. Although we did answer the question of this video, I have something else I want to add. It's nice to imagine Finch and Rose chilling in the afterlife together at last. No war, no revenge, no burdens, just eternal peace together as best friends. Or not. Some players suggest they went to hell, as they did do bad things. But that's not actually true. The biggest misconception about heaven and hell is that bad people go to hell and good people go to heaven, but that actually isn't true according to Christianity. You can only go to heaven if you believe in Jesus. Of course, that's if Christianity really is right and there is a God, religion or not. Nobody 100% knows what the afterlife is supposed to be like. Either way, even if that was true, we don't know if any of the EP cast were religious. Just wanted to get that out of the way. In truth, this just adds even more to their theories. Jackdaw mistakenly forced a path down onto Rose and never realized how much he had been accidentally hurting her. And now, Rose did the exact same thing to Finch, mistakenly forcing her own path onto them, and they suffer the exact same fate and road as her. Imagine how much guilt drove Rose up the wall after her death, wherever she went to. The pain she went through, because she was dragged down another person's path because they were so caught up in their own anger they didn't realize what they were doing to her, only for her to be so caught up in her own pain that she does the exact same thing to Finch, accidentally making them feel compelled to swear vengeance to her. It's a vicious, mind-blowing cycle. Sish, you're a goddamn genius. Summary time. The Killhouse nightmare mode is just Rose having a nightmare, and more stuff added to Rose and Finch's theories. And that's that. The voice acting and dramatic monologuing was so much fun in this one. I'm literally sweating from all the yelling. This one was a little short compared to the usual, but that's perfectly fine with me. After dealing with that Freelancer theory that ended up being held to edit and get done, a small, simple theory was a nice way to break that ice. Actually, this wasn't small and simple, this was quite big. This theory ended up being half about the Killhouse and half about Rose and Finch, which is good. The Killhouse is an incredibly important part to their characters. The conclusion surprised even me. It's so cruelly painful and shocking how the horrible consequences of Jackdaw's actions were accidentally inflicted onto Rose, which made her suffer hell. And then she inflicts that pain to the Freelancer in the exact same way because she tried to protect them from her path, pain, and problems, but ended up achieving the exact opposite. Sorry I keep saying that too much. I just feel like I can't emphasize enough how truly horrifying and painful that is. Y'all didn't think I was gonna make you cry today. If Rose had lived, it would have eradicated all of the Freelancer's character development. The way Finch just kept fighting and fighting and fighting until they got what they wanted, and at the end they were just like, that's it, it's done, I can die, it's finished, it's all finished. The last few years of their lives were just devoted to revenge for Rose. They were so grief-stricken and heartbroken, they didn't even care at the end, they got what they wanted. Entry Point is incredibly well done and planned, and it never fails to impress me, especially when I discover something new like this. There is so much hidden secrets and shocking stuff to discover, it's so much fun. Really makes me excited and wonder how our minds will be blown after the Freelancer DLC comes out. Sish, I can't believe I'm saying this, but please don't hold back, even if it breaks our heart. If you happen to be listening to this, you are such an awesome creator. The game you come up with is genius. It's amazing. Well, see y'all.